I will now call this meeting to order. It is 5:15 p.m. We have no public comments for posted agenda items today. I will now turn the floor over to Dr. Kimberly Martin, Executive Director for Accountability and Academic Support, who will review the newly released accountability ratings for the district and for each campus.
Thank you, President Hernandez, Board of Trustees. I'm here to share with you the 2024 accountability predictions. And just a reminder that in 2023, there was a lawsuit filed by several ISDs, about 120 of those. Galena Park was included. That case is still being litigated. The ISDs did win that case. TEA appealed, and so that's in appellate court. Right before accountability was set to be released this year, another case was filed and a temporary restraining order was placed on TEA so that they couldn't release ratings. There's a hearing that has been postponed and is scheduled for September 16th. But we were allowed, TEA sent out an email that said if we wanted to find out if our predictions matched, we could share all of those with TEA. They wouldn't tell us yes or no, just whether they matched or not. So we found out about 2 weeks later that our predictions 100% matched. So everything we're about to share with you, if TEA had released our report cards, would have been accurate numbers, okay? So the first thing is we were very excited to share because we think we did really well. Overall, Galena Park ISD had an 87 in our accountability predictions, which were matched by TEA. And for most of us, TEA's new system, the A through F system, falls under what we would consider the regular grading scale, so how we grew up. I do want to point out that 60 to 69 is a D. So our 87B is at the very high end of that B range. We're excited to be shooting for an A next year. One of the key factors of the new accountability system is the proportional weighting system. And this is really important. It's only been in the last 2 or 3 years this system has come about. The first year we weren't rated because of COVID. Last year we had the lawsuit. Proportional weighting means that the bigger our schools are, the larger weight they have in the district's accountability. It's based on an ADA enrollment that includes AEAs. So we talked recently about alternative education campuses. Those are proportionally rated as well. So some sample of our district proportionality, 43% of our district's accountability is at our high schools. 28% of that is at the North Shore Senior High combined campuses. A campus like Cobb accounts for about 6% of our district accountability. Cimarron is 1.8%. Pyburn is 1.5. So you can see the smaller our schools are, the less they count in our accountability. The larger they are, the more weight they have. I'm going to talk to you about each domain. You don't have to spend much time looking at this graphic, but I do want to point out, although we know our elementary and middle schools do a tremendous amount of work, their accountability is 100% based on the STAR test. At high school, that is different. We have about 40 to 45% of our accountability based on STAR. We have a lot of our accountability based on CCMR, college, career, and military readiness. And then our graduation rate is also heavily weighted at the high school level. So theirs is a little more complicated. Those first 3 pie charts make up 70% of our district's accountability. The last pie chart makes up about 30%. One of the great things about this current system is that we get to keep our best score in each of those areas. So every individual campus and the district uses the score that is their highest score at that 70% accountability. And then the 30% is always. Okay, so we get our best score out of those 3. We always get our domain 3 score. So in domain 1, that is student achievement. For our elementary and middle schools, it's a straight average. We take the percent of students who who score approaches or higher, meets or higher, masters or higher, divide that by 3. TEA gives us a component score. There's some magic scaling that happens in the background, but that's where we get our letter grade at the elementary and middle schools. The high schools, 40% is weighted that same way. 40% is weighted college, career, and military readiness, but that is a year delayed. So our current accountability predictions that we're sharing now are based on the 23 graduating class. It takes about a year to collect all of that data. And then for this accountability measure, we take the best of our 4, 5, or 6-year graduation rate, and that's at 20%. Something I do want to point out is we used our 6-year graduation rate at both high schools. Later, when we get to Domain 3, we don't have that option. We have to use our 4-year graduation rate, okay? So for Domain 1, these are our letter scores, and we've placed all of our schools. You can kind of see the majority of our schools are in that C range. We had some standouts with Early College High School and North Shore Middle School and WAMS. This is not usually anyone in the state's highest weighted score, but we do have some of our campuses that performed really well here. Domain 2 actually has 2 measures in it. The first one is called 2A, Academic Growth, and that's based on every individual student on a campus. So what was their score in 2023 and what was their score in 2024? It compares them. And as long as that student is making a year or more worth of progress, we get to count that student in growth in both reading language arts and in math. All of those scores are calculated together, divided by the total number of tests, and schools get a growth score there. And then 2B is our favorite measure in Galena Park ISD because it takes our STAR scores and our CCMR scores and it recalculates them. The state knows it's a little bit harder to teach economically disadvantaged students, so we get a little bit of a bump there. Way more of a bump for our STAR scores. We get about a 1 or 2 percentage point bump for CCMR. So there's not much on that curve for CCMR, but it does recalculate based on the number of students we have who are economically disadvantaged. This chart shows you the asterisk is 2A, so that's that growth measure. You can see campuses like Cimarron and Cloverleaf had a higher growth score. 2B takes that first Domain 1 score and recalculates it with our economically disadvantaged. So you can see schools like Galena Park Middle School, WAMS, Cobb, they all used that economically disadvantaged. You can see we are much higher on the chart above that B line. And if I were to give a B plus for everybody who was 85 or higher, that would be the majority of our campuses in that B range as well. We scored pretty well here when we take into consideration our economically disadvantaged population and our growth. Domain 3 is much harder to measure. It is actually the measure that's tied to the federal accountability. And remember, this one is always 30%. You don't get to keep your best score. One of the best things about this part of the system is that there are targets we have to hit, and we know what those targets are. It was written into statute that we have to know those for 5 years, so until 2027, we know what those targets are, but it only looks at the highest 2 performance standards. So in order to pass STAR, you can get an approaches score, a meet score, and a master score. We don't count approaches for Domain 3. So only our students who are performing very, very well count here. We always measure 4 groups. The all-student group and the high-focus group are always measured. High focus includes our emergent bilingual students, all of our economically disadvantaged students, our highly mobile students, and our special education students all in one group. And then each campus measures their lowest 2 subpops, and that's based on the year before. So whichever 2 racial ethnic subpops performed lowest the years before, those have to meet the target in order to close the gaps. That's why this is called closing the gaps. This is a chart, This chart kind of shows that for elementary and middle schools, that is always measuring STAR with the exception of TELPAS. So we have our emergent bilinguals, that counts for about 10% of 30% or 3% of the overall accountability. But at the high school level, we're counting only our 4-year graduation rate. So remember I told you in Domain 1, we were able to count our 6-year. Domain 3 only counts the 4-year, and then it only counts the federal CCMR. So federal CCMR is just a little bit harder. There are less exclusions. We don't get to exclude our life skills students from this one. But this chart shows how well Galena Park ISD is really working with those racial subpops, as well as our economically disadvantaged and SPED students. We see over half of our campuses above that A and B line, including Galena Park High School. Some of our bigger campuses like North Shore Middle School earned an A here. They are meeting those targets. Many of those campuses, when we had their campus accountability meetings over the last week, were meeting not just the 2027 target, but already on track to meet the 2028 target, especially those in the A range. So we're doing really well when we compare ourselves to federal accountability. Now, we do know we have a couple of campuses that we need to work with. These are our overall calculations. So you can see we had 4 A campuses: Early College High School, Galena Park Middle School, North Shore Middle School, and Ways all had an A. Some of the B campuses, I want to point out that Cloverleaf is in that B category. If you remember last year, they grew 26 accountability points this year. It's pretty amazing. Purple Sage Elementary grew over 20 points as well. So we had some big accountability jumps. And then we do have Williamson and Sam, as well as Green Valley in the lower categories, and those are going to be focuses for us this year. I want to show you just really quickly, this would be a great slide for us to put our TEA accountability report card on, but we don't have that yet. So we're using the lead forward measures. You can see this is our district score, so not individual campus scores, but in Domain 1 we scored a 78, Domain 2A we scored a 78, Domain 2B, that's the one that takes into consideration our economically disadvantaged, we got an 86. So we get to pick the best of those scores, we take that 86, and that is 70% of our accountability. Domain 3 is always 30% of our accountability, and we scored really well there. We scored, especially when we start comparing to areas around us, we did phenomenally well here. We scored an 88 there, and that's 30% of our accountability. So if we do the math, that's how we come up with our overall score of an 87. So we do have some improvement strategies laid out. We're going to focus on individual growth in reading and math. Every kid is creating their own growth chart where they want to be moving from 24 to 25. We have set differentiated tutorial groups so that every kid is reaching their full potential, whatever that is. We're focusing on TELPAS growth this year. That's with our emergent bilingual students. The rules have dramatically changed on how to show growth there. It's gotten really hard in the 2025 accountability year, much harder than it was in 24. We don't want to lose any of those points, so we're attacking that proactively now. We're setting targeted campus goals with our campuses that need to show growth and additional support for specific campuses. The accountability system is incredibly complicated, so we tried to give you just a little overview. Are there any questions I can answer for you? Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Martin, excellent. My question, and I think you answered it, when I looked at the report and I looked at those schools with new principals still very, very low, my concern is what are we doing? And you sort of answered it when you put that last slide up to put in place.
We do have teams working from CNI as well as some of the retired administrators that we're working with. We have teams who are helping those principals develop accountability plans. We're using some of the things that we know really worked at Cloverleaf and at Purple Sage Elementary, and we're trying to duplicate those in those items in those areas.
Okay, thank you. Very, very excellent report.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. There being no other business before the board at this time, the meeting is adjourned. The time is 5:29 p.m. A quorum is present. I will now call this meeting to order. An executive session of the board will now be held on the matters contained in the notice for this meeting as authorized by sections 551.001 through section 551.084 of the Texas Government Code, the Texas Open Meetings Act. Should the board determine that any final action, final decision, or final vote be required with regard to any matter considered in such closed or executive meeting or session, then such final action, final decision, or final vote shall be at either this public meeting upon the reconvening of this public meeting or at a subsequent public meeting of the board upon notice thereof as the board shall determine. A closed or executive meeting of the board will now be held. The time is 5:30 p.m. Executive session is adjourned and the board is now in open session. The time is 6 p.m. I will entertain motions on the items covered in executive session. Is there a motion to approve the employment contractual personnel?
I, Adrian Stevens, move we approve the employment of contractual personnel as presented.
I, Noe Esparza, second the motion.
The motion A motion was made by Adrian Stevens and seconded by Noe Esparza. All in favor? The motion carried 7-0 with no abstentions. The Board of Trustees of Galena Park Independent School District is now convened in a regular meeting on Monday, September the 9th of 2024 in the Administration Building of Galena Park Independent School District, the address of which is 14705 Wood Forest Boulevard, Houston, Texas 77015. The time is 6:01 p.m. I want to welcome the members of our audience to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Galena Park ISD Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports from the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting as permitted by Section 551.071 to 551.084, inclusive of the Texas Government Code. I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or in silent mode. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and for your interest in the Galena Park Independent School District. We have no public comments for posted agenda items today. We have no public comments for non-agenda items today. Tonight's invocation will be presented by Ramon Garza, and the pledges to the American and Texas flags will be led by the Galena Park Middle School Army LOTC. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the pledges of allegiance to the flags.
Please pray with me. Loving and gracious God, you're indeed the giver of all good gifts. And we thank you today for all the blessings, for the successful outcome of our school board meeting and our upcoming events like tonight's summer graduation. Please watch over all that will be impacted by the storm in the Gulf of Mexico. I ask your guidance on all the construction projects ongoing and the ones in the planning stages. Bless all of our staff members, both the teaching and support members. We ask that you bless them abundantly, and we continue to seek your wisdom, guidance, courage, and strength. Be with us in our deliberations and help us to be wise in the decisions we make for the good of all who have placed their trust and confidence in our leadership. Give us the insight to lead with integrity, that our decisions may reflect what is right and good. Help us to make decisions that are for the good of all, dear Lord. Grant us the humility to always seek your will in all that we do and say. All glory be yours, loving God, now and always, through your Son Christ, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. We will now move on to this meeting's special recognition portion of the agenda. Dr. Moore?
Welcome to everybody that had time to get out tonight. Good news is it looks like the storm may be heading a little bit farther east, so maybe we'll have a great week of school. That's the plan. So glad to see you, and we're going to get on with the show.
All right. Well, good evening. Trustee Jose Jimenez, would you please join Dr. Moore and assist with the recognitions on this evening? All right, Galena Park ISD would like to recognize the East Harris County Empowerment Council for its donation to the Galena Park ISD Child Care Center. Will Ms. Christina Alley from the Empowerment Council please join us on stage? And Ms. Barbara Garrett, Director of Child Care Services North, and Ms. Diane Sharp, Director of Child Care Services South, please join us on stage as well. All right. The East Harris County Empowerment Council graciously donated 11 gift bags with newborn clothes and 35 welcome baby bags with literature for new parents. These resources will be used to support families that use our child care centers. The East Harris County Empowerment Council truly embodies the spirit of serving the Galena Park ISD community. Please give her a round of applause. The Galena Park ISD would like to recognize Lorena Sandoval for being selected as the District 4 recipient of the 2024 Heroes for Children Award for the State Board of Education. Ms. Sandoval, who has joined us up on stage. Ms. Sandoval will our principal from North Shore Elementary, Ms. Esmeralda Perez. Would you all please join us there we go. And our counselor as well. Thank you. All right. Ms. Sandoval is one of only 15 awardees statewide to receive this recognition for the outstanding volunteerism she has offered to Galena Park ISD. Thank you, Ms. Sandoval, for being a volunteer leader and student advocate throughout the 23-24 school year. And last but certainly not least, Galena Park ISD recognizes Havard Elementary School student Juliet Butler for participating in the Education in Action Summer 2024 Lone Star Leadership Academy. Will Dr. Hamlin, Havard Elementary School Principal, and Karen Bernal, Havard Elementary School Assistant Principal, please join her on stage. Juliet was chosen to participate in the Lone Star Leadership Academy because of her academic success and leadership ability, an educator recommendation, and involvement in school and community activities. While in Dallas this summer, Juliet learned about Texas leaders, had the chance to meet other outstanding students, and developed her leadership skills while discovering a wealth of information about her state. Juliet, please keep up that awesome work. And we would also like for her family to come up and join for a photo.
Typically, we recognize other elected officials that are in the room, and I did not see our Jacinta City Councilwoman when she came in, so Carmela, welcome. All right.
Any board member may make a comment during this portion of the agenda without prior posting being required. Comment items may not pertain to the character of any student, staff, or board member and may not be discussed or deliberated upon at this time. Does anyone have a comment? We now come to the business portion of tonight's meeting. We invite and encourage you to stay for the remainder of the meeting. However, if you need to leave early, we understand, and this is a convenient time to do so. We appreciate your attendance. Please come again. We now move on to new business. Is there a motion to approve the board approve an agreement for a limitation on the taxable value of property for maintenance and operation ad valorem tax purpose pursuant of the application filed by Summit Next Gen LLC, and to authorize the superintendent to take all further actions necessary to effectuate the agreement?
I, Jose Jimenez, move we approve that the board approve an agreement for a limitation on the taxable value of property for maintenance and operation ad valorem tax purpose pursuant to the application filed by Summit Next Gen LLC, and to authorize the superintendent to take all further actions necessary to effectuate the agreement as presented.
I, Linda Sherrod, second the motion.
A motion was made by Jose Jimenez and seconded by Linda Sherrod. All in favor? The motion carried 7-0 with 0 abstentions. Is there a motion to approve the renewal proposal from Texas Political Subdivision's Joint Self-Insurance Fund to provide workers' compensation insurance for the coverage term of October the 1st of 2024 through October the 1st of 2025 for an annual premium of $1,088,270?
I, Noe Esparza, move we approve the renewal proposal from Texas Political Subdivision's Joint Self-Insurance Fund to provide workers' compensation insurance as presented.
I, Amanda Arabia, second the motion.
A motion was made by Noe Esparza and seconded by Amanda Arabia. All in favor? All abstentions? The motion carried 6-0 with 1 abstention. Is there a motion to approve the general consent agenda?
I, Noe Esparza, move we approve the general consent agenda as presented.
I, Adrian Stevens, second the motion.
A motion was made by Noe Esparza and seconded by Adrian Stevens. All in favor? The motion carried 7-0 with 0 abstentions. With respect to the construction consent agenda, do we want to remove any item for a separate vote or take the agenda as is?
I, Ramon Garza, move we approve the construction consent agenda as presented.
I, Jose Jimenez, second the motion.
A motion was made by Ramon Garza and seconded by Jose Jimenez. All in favor? The motion carried 7-0 with 0 abstentions. With respect to the financial consent agenda, do we want to remove any item for a separate vote or take the agenda as is?
I, Adrian Stevens, move we approve the financial consent agenda as presented.
I, Noe Esparza, second the motion.
A motion was made by Adrian Stevens and seconded by Noe Esparza. All in favor? The motion carried 7-0 with 0 abstentions. The following documents were presented to the board for information. Dr. Juana Giacona, Chief Administrative Officer, presented Early Head Start Update and Fund 205 Expenditure Report Summary. Mr. Ben Poppy, Chief Financial Officer, presented number 1, Tax Collection Report, July of 2024. Number 2, 2016 Bond Program Financial Reports as of July 31st of 2024. And number 3, 2016 Bond Program and Facilities Construction Update. There being no further business before the board at this time, the meeting is adjourned. The time is 6:17 p.m.